"Get that filthy beggar away from my customers," the restaurant manager screamed as a bowl of hot soup crashed onto the sidewalk. Naomi Carter flinched hard. The cheap plastic tray slipped from her shaking hands. Soup splashed across her faded shoes. Laughter exploded around her. Phones lifted into the air. A few rich customers near the outdoor tables covered their noses like something rotten had entered the street. And beside the overturned bowl, the blind beggar slowly bent down with trembling fingers, trying to feel for the bread that had fallen into the dirty rainwater. Naomi's eyes filled instantly. "Please," she whispered. "He did nothing wrong." "Nothing wrong," the manager snapped. "You feed trash with restaurant food while paying customers are watching." More laughter. Naomi stood frozen in her worn brown uniform. The fabric near her shoulder was torn. Her old purse hung by a broken strap. Inside it were hospital bills for her mother, Martha. Bills she still could not pay. But every night after work, she still gave half her meal to the same blind man sitting near the bus stop. The old man never begged loudly. Never touched anyone. He only sat quietly with dark glasses and a worn coat while people passed him like he did not exist. Naomi swallowed hard and knelt beside him anyway. "Sir, are you hurt?" she asked softly. The beggar turned toward her voice. Calm. Strange. Too calm for someone being humiliated. "You should not lose your job because of me," he said quietly. Naomi shook her head fast. "I cannot leave you hungry." A woman at the nearest table laughed openly. "Look at her defending him like he is some king." Another customer raised his phone higher. "This is why poor people stay poor." Naomi lowered her head. Her cheeks burned. But she still picked up the soaked bread with shaking fingers. "Please," she begged the manager. "My mother needs medicine. I cannot lose this job." The manager stepped closer. Cold eyes. Expensive watch. Gold cufflinks shining beneath the restaurant lights. "Then maybe you should stop acting like a charity worker. I only gave him leftovers. And now my guests are uncomfortable." He pointed toward the street. "Take him and get out." Naomi froze. "Sir, now." Two security guards began walking toward them. Around Naomi, nobody defended her. Nobody. Rich couples whispered behind glasses of wine. Valets smirked near luxury cars parked outside the restaurant. Rain tapped softly against the sidewalk while the city lights reflected across puddles like broken glass. Naomi looked down at the blind man again. He was still sitting quietly in the rain. Still holding the crushed bread in both hands. Then something strange happened. One of the guards suddenly stopped moving. His eyes narrowed at the beggar's wrist. Just for a second. A heavy silver watch peeked beneath the torn sleeve of the beggar's coat. Old. Scratched. Expensive. The guard frowned slightly. But before he could speak, the manager barked again. "Throw them both out." Naomi quickly stood in front of the blind man. "Do not touch him," she cried. Silence hit the sidewalk for one sharp second. Even the crowd looked surprised. The manager laughed bitterly. "You think you are a hero?" Naomi's voice cracked. "No. I just know what it feels like when nobody helps you." The blind beggar slowly lifted his face toward her. His expression changed for the first time. Tiny. Almost invisible. Like pain mixed with recognition. "What did you say?" he asked softly. Naomi wiped her tears fast. "Nothing." But the old man kept staring toward her voice. His fingers tightened around the wet bread. Then he quietly repeated her exact words under his breath. "Nobody helps you," his voice sounded distant suddenly. Like he had heard those words somewhere before. The manager rolled his eyes. Enough. He grabbed Naomi's purse and threw it toward the street. Papers scattered everywhere. Hospital bills. Medicine receipts. Old photographs. The crowd gasped softly as Naomi rushed into the rain trying to collect everything before the water ruined them. "Please stop," she cried. "Those are for my mother." A car horn sounded across the street. Long, sharp. Expensive black tires rolled slowly toward the restaurant entrance. But nobody noticed yet. Naomi dropped to her knees in the rain, desperately grabbing soaked papers from the pavement. Then one final photo slid from her purse and landed directly beside the blind beggar's shoe. His hand moved slowly across the wet ground, and stopped on the picture. The moment his fingers touched it, his entire body went still. Completely still. Naomi looked up in confusion. The blind man was trembling. Outside the restaurant, the black luxury car suddenly stopped. And inside the back seat, someone whispered Naomi's name. The black luxury car remained motionless beside the restaurant entrance while rain slid slowly across the tinted windows. Naomi Carter stood frozen in the street, soaked papers clutched against her chest. Her breathing shook hard. The blind beggar still held the old photograph in trembling hands. And inside the car, a deep voice spoke again. "Naomi Carter." The rear door opened slowly. Expensive shoes touched the wet pavement first. Then a tall black man stepped out beneath the restaurant lights. Calm. Elegant. Dangerous in the quietest way. His dark coat looked untouched by the rain. Two security men immediately lowered their heads. The restaurant manager's face changed instantly. "Mr. Kingston," he whispered nervously. Naomi looked confused. She had heard that name before. Everyone in the city had. Marcus Kingston. Billionaire owner of Kingston Holdings. One of the richest men in Chicago. Marcus ignored the manager completely. His eyes stayed on the blind beggar. Then on the soaked photograph in the old man's hand. For one strange second, something cold moved across Marcus's face. Shock. Real shock. "Where did you get that picture?" he asked quietly. Naomi quickly reached for it. "It is mine, sir." The blind beggar slowly released the photo. Marcus took it carefully. Rain dripped from the edge of the paper. The picture showed a little black girl standing beside a woman outside a tiny church. The image was old. Folded many times. But Marcus stared at it like he had seen a ghost. The manager forced an awkward laugh. "Sir, this girl has been causing problems all night." Marcus did not even look at him. "Did I ask you to speak?" Silence. Heavy silence. The rich customers stopped whispering. Even the guards looked nervous now. Naomi lowered her eyes fast. "I am sorry, sir. I did not mean trouble." Marcus finally looked at her directly. Her soaked uniform. Her shaking hands. The hospital bills pressed against her chest. The cheap shoes splitting near the sole. And then, his eyes stopped on the small silver necklace around her neck. Tiny. Old. Half broken. Marcus's expression tightened instantly. "That necklace," he said softly. Naomi touched it protectively. "It belonged to my mother." The blind beggar suddenly turned toward Marcus. "You remember it too, do you not?" The air changed immediately. The manager blinked nervously. "Sir, this old man is confused. He sits here every day begging for food." But Marcus kept staring at the necklace. Like his mind had gone somewhere far away. Naomi stepped back slightly. Fear mixed with confusion inside her chest. "Please. I should go now. My mother is alone at the hospital." Marcus finally spoke again. Quiet. Controlled. "Which hospital?" Naomi hesitated. The manager quickly interrupted. "Sir, she lies all the time. Enough, Marcus said coldly. The single word shut the entire sidewalk silent. Tiny hope touched Naomi's face for the first time that night. Just a little. Someone was finally listening. But it vanished quickly. The blind beggar suddenly began coughing hard beside them. Weak. Painful. Naomi immediately knelt beside him again. Sir, breathe slowly. Marcus watched carefully. Every movement. Every word. Something about Naomi's voice disturbed him deeply. Like a memory he could not fully reach. You still feed him even after this? Marcus asked. Naomi nodded softly. Hungry people still deserve kindness. A woman near the restaurant laughed under her breath. Kindness does not pay bills. Naomi's face tightened quietly. She looked away before anyone could see tears forming again. Then her phone vibrated suddenly. Old. Cracked. Barely working. She answered quickly. And her entire face lost color. What? She whispered. Her voice broke instantly. No. Please do not stop her treatment. The call ended. Naomi could barely breathe now. My mother needs medicine tonight, she whispered. They said they cannot wait anymore. Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. The manager crossed his arms. Maybe she should worry less about beggars and more about paying her bills. The crowd murmured again. Some nodded. Some smirked. And yet Marcus still said nothing. He only looked at the old photograph once more. Then at Naomi. Then at the blind beggar. If you are listening right now, tell me where you are watching from, and tell me honestly, do you believe Naomi is hiding something, or do you think she is the only person telling the truth? The blind beggar suddenly lifted his head again. Slowly. Ask her mother about St. Mary's Church, he whispered weakly. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. Naomi looked completely confused. How do you know that name? She asked. But before the old man could answer, the manager snapped at security. Get these people away from my restaurant now. 2 guards stepped forward again. Naomi grabbed her papers tightly and backed away in fear. Marcus finally spoke without raising his voice. Nobody touches her. Silence crashed across the sidewalk again. The manager swallowed hard. But hidden behind the restaurant window, another woman had been watching everything in secret. Elegant dress. Diamond earrings. Cold eyes full of panic. Vanessa Reed. Marcus Kingston's fiancée. And the moment she heard the words, St. Mary's Church, her hand began to shake. Upstairs inside the restaurant office, her phone was already dialing someone. Find the hospital records, she whispered urgently. Before Marcus sees them. Down on the street, Marcus stepped closer to Naomi one final time. Tell me your mother's full name. Naomi hesitated. Rain fell harder around them. Then she answered softly. Martha Brooks. Marcus Kingston went completely still. Marcus Kingston went completely still. Rain kept falling around the restaurant lights, but Naomi Carter barely noticed anymore. Martha Brooks? Marcus repeated slowly. Like the name hurt him somehow. Naomi nodded carefully. Yes, sir. The blind beggar lowered his head again. Silent now. Too silent. Marcus looked at the old photograph once more. Then at Naomi's necklace. Then back at her tired face. Something inside him was clearly moving. But before he could speak again, Vanessa Reed suddenly appeared beside the restaurant entrance with a perfect smile already prepared. Marcus, she said softly, slipping her hand onto his arm. You should not stand in the rain. Naomi immediately stepped backward. Her wet shoes scraped against the pavement. She understood women like Vanessa instantly. Rich. Beautiful. Untouchable. Vanessa glanced once at Naomi's torn uniform before looking away like she was invisible. Security should handle this, Vanessa added quietly. Marcus did not answer. His eyes stayed on Naomi. Which hospital is your mother in? Naomi hesitated again. St. Luke's Charity Ward. Vanessa's fingers tightened slightly around Marcus's arm. Tiny. But visible. Marcus, she interrupted smoothly, the board meeting starts in 20 minutes. Delay it. His voice was calm. Final. Vanessa's smile weakened for half a second. Naomi noticed it immediately. Then Marcus reached into his coat and handed Naomi a business card. Heavy black paper. Gold letters. Take this to the hospital desk, he said quietly. Your mother's treatment will continue tonight. Naomi stared at the card like it was unreal. Her hands shook harder now. Why are you helping me? Marcus looked at her for a long moment before answering. Because something about this story does not make sense. Vanessa quickly stepped in again. Marcus helps many people, she said with a soft laugh toward the watching crowd. Do not misunderstand his kindness. But Naomi already saw something else in Marcus's eyes. Not pity. Recognition. The manager forced another nervous smile nearby. Sir, this girl causes trouble everywhere she goes. Marcus finally looked at him again. Cold this time. And yet she was the only person feeding a hungry man. Silence hit the sidewalk instantly. The manager lowered his head. Naomi swallowed hard. No one had defended her like that before. Not once. Tiny hope flickered painfully inside her chest. But hope scared her now more than hunger did. Her phone vibrated again suddenly. Another call from the hospital. Naomi answered fast. A tired nurse spoke through static. Miss Carter, your mother collapsed again. Naomi's face drained instantly. I am coming now. She grabbed her papers quickly and turned toward the bus stop. Marcus watched her carefully. Take my driver. No, the answer came too fast. Naomi lowered her eyes immediately after. I mean, thank you, sir. But I do not want charity. Vanessa smirked softly. Pride does not pay hospital bills. Naomi's voice cracked quietly. Neither does cruelty. The crowd reacted instantly. Some gasped. Vanessa's face hardened. Marcus said nothing, but his eyes narrowed slightly. Naomi quickly walked into the rain before anyone could stop her. Her cheap shoes splashed through puddles beneath glowing storefront lights while expensive cars rolled past without slowing down. Behind her, Marcus remained standing beside the blind beggar. Find out everything about Martha Brooks, he told his assistant quietly. And St. Mary's Church. Yes, sir. Vanessa overheard every word. Panic flashed behind her eyes again. Much stronger now. Later that night, Naomi sat beside her mother's hospital bed inside a crowded charity ward. Weak coughing echoed through the dim hallway. Paint peeled from the walls. Old ceiling fans clicked above rows of exhausted patients. Martha Brooks looked painfully thin beneath the blankets. Oxygen tubes rested beneath her nose. Naomi gently placed the medicine bag beside her bed. You should have eaten first, Martha whispered weakly. Naomi forced a small smile. I am fine. But her stomach had been empty since morning. Martha slowly touched the silver necklace around Naomi's neck. Fear suddenly filled her tired eyes. Did anyone ask about this? Naomi froze. A man did. Martha grabbed her wrist immediately. Weak, but desperate. You must never lose that necklace. Why? Martha looked toward the dark hospital window. Tears slowly filled her eyes. Because somebody once tried to bury the truth with it. Naomi's breathing stopped for a second. Before she could ask another question, voices suddenly rose outside the ward. Angry voices. A landlord. "Where is Naomi Carter?" he shouted from the hallway. "If she does not pay tonight, her room gets locked by morning." Naomi closed her eyes slowly. More pressure. More shame. More fear. Then another voice spoke quietly from the end of the hallway. Deep. Controlled. Familiar. "Leave her alone." Naomi looked up instantly. Marcus Kingston was standing there. Marcus Kingston stood at the end of the hospital hallway while the landlord slowly backed away in silence. The cheap fluorescent lights above flickered softly. Nurses pushed old medicine carts past peeling walls. Somewhere nearby, a child cried behind a curtain. But Marcus's attention never left Naomi Carter. She still stood protectively near her mother's hospital bed, one hand gripping the silver necklace at her throat like it was the only thing holding her together. "You followed me here?" Naomi asked quietly. Marcus answered calmly. "I needed to ask more questions." Martha Brooks suddenly began coughing hard again beneath the thin blankets. Naomi rushed to support her immediately. "Slow breaths, Mama." Marcus watched carefully. Every movement between them felt painfully familiar somehow. Too familiar. Vanessa Reed's voice echoed suddenly through Marcus's phone speaker from inside his coat pocket. "Marcus, the board members are waiting." He silenced the call without answering. Naomi noticed that too. Tiny details. Tiny cracks. "Why does my mother's name matter to you?" she asked softly. Marcus hesitated for the first time. Then he looked toward his assistant standing near the hallway entrance. "Bring me the St. Mary's records." "Already checking, sir." Naomi frowned immediately. "What records?" Nobody answered her directly. That frightened her more than shouting would have. Across town, inside the glass walls of Kingston Holdings, Vanessa Reed stood alone in Marcus's private office staring at old photographs spread across his desk. One picture showed a young woman standing outside St. Mary's Church nearly 25 years ago. And beside her, a little black girl wearing the exact same silver necklace Naomi wore tonight. Vanessa's face slowly lost color. "No," she whispered. She grabbed her phone instantly. "Find every file connected to Martha Brooks," she ordered coldly. "And if hospital records still exist, remove them." Back at the charity ward, Naomi sat beside her mother again while Marcus quietly spoke with the attending doctor outside the curtain. "How long has Martha Brooks been treated here?" Marcus asked. "Years," the doctor answered carefully. "Mostly untreated complications because she cannot afford proper care." Marcus glanced back toward Naomi. She was feeding her mother tiny spoonfuls of soup even though her own hands were still trembling from hunger. "Does she have family?" The doctor hesitated. "Only Naomi." Martha suddenly called weakly from inside the room. Marcus, the billionaire, froze instantly. Naomi looked shocked. "Mama, how do you know his name?" Martha's tired eyes filled with fear. "Because some promises never stay buried." Silence swallowed the room. Marcus slowly stepped closer to the bed now. "What promise?" he asked quietly. Martha looked terrified suddenly. Her weak fingers grabbed Naomi's wrist hard. "Do not trust rich people," she whispered painfully. "Especially the ones connected to St. Mary's." Naomi's breathing shook. Marcus's expression darkened slightly. He was clearly hearing pieces of something old. Something dangerous. Then his assistant returned holding a thin folder. "Sir, we found partial records." Marcus opened the file immediately. Old church documents. Adoption forms. Missing pages. Water damage. One name circled in faded ink. Martha Brooks. Another line had been torn away completely. "Who removed these pages?" Marcus asked sharply. We do not know yet. Naomi stood slowly now. Fear mixed with anger inside her eyes. Somebody needs to tell me what is happening. Before Marcus could answer, the blind beggar suddenly appeared at the hospital doorway. Wet coat. Dark glasses. Breathing harder than before. Naomi looked stunned. You followed me? The old man nodded slowly. Because they are already trying to erase the truth again. Marcus turned sharply toward him. Who are you really? But the old man only looked toward the folder in Marcus's hand. The missing page matters more than my name. Tiny hope flashed across Marcus's face now. The pieces were finally beginning to connect. But almost immediately, another obstacle arrived. Two expensive black SUVs stopped outside the hospital entrance. Vanessa Reed stepped out first. Elegant. Controlled. Smiling perfectly again. But her eyes looked cold enough to freeze the entire hallway. Behind her stood two lawyers from Kingston Holdings. Marcus, Vanessa said softly as she entered the ward. You are embarrassing yourself over a poor girl with fake stories. Naomi lowered her eyes instantly again. Shame returned like a knife twisting open. Vanessa stepped closer to Martha's bed. Then her gaze suddenly stopped on Naomi's silver necklace. Just for 1 second, panic cracked through her perfect expression. Marcus saw it immediately. So did the blind beggar. Vanessa recovered fast. That necklace, she said carefully. Where did you steal it? Naomi's face went pale. I did not steal anything. Vanessa smiled coldly. Then prove it. Marcus slowly closed the old file in his hands. His voice turned quieter now. More dangerous. Vanessa, he said slowly, why are you afraid of a necklace? The entire room went silent. Then Marcus's assistant looked back down at the damaged church file and whispered nervously, Sir, there is another name hidden beneath the torn page. The assistant's eyes widened slowly as he stared at the damaged church file. Sir, he whispered again. The hidden name under the torn page says Kingston. Silence crushed the hospital room instantly. Naomi Carter stepped backward like the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. Marcus Kingston's jaw tightened hard. Vanessa Reed reacted first. That proves nothing, she snapped immediately. Old church papers mean nothing. But her voice cracked slightly at the end. The blind beggar lowered his head quietly near the doorway. You are afraid because the truth survived, he said softly. Vanessa turned toward him sharply. Remove him. 2 security guards stepped into the hallway immediately. Naomi panicked at once. Please do not touch him. One guard grabbed the old man's shoulder roughly. The blind beggar stumbled slightly. Marcus's voice suddenly cut through the tension. Let him go. The guards froze instantly. Vanessa forced a smile again. Marcus, you are letting poor strangers manipulate you. Naomi looked exhausted now. Humiliated. Trapped between worlds that both frightened her. Her mother began coughing harder again behind the curtain. A nurse rushed forward nervously. She needs treatment tonight. Naomi's face turned pale. Please. I still need more time to pay. Vanessa looked directly at the nurse. St. Mary's receives donations from Kingston Holdings. Fraud cases should not receive special treatment. Naomi stared at her in disbelief. I never lied. Vanessa stepped closer slowly. Elegant heels against cracked hospital tile. Then why does your necklace connect to a dead family scandal? The room fell silent again. Naomi's hands shook violently around the silver necklace now. My mother gave this to me when I was little. Vanessa smiled coldly. Convenient story. Marcus watched every reaction carefully now. Too many things felt wrong. Too rehearsed. His assistant leaned closer quietly. Sir, the church records were altered 12 years ago. Marcus looked up sharply. By who? Before the assistant could answer, Vanessa interrupted loudly. Enough. She turned toward Naomi. You poor girls always want the same thing. Money. Sympathy. Rich men to rescue you. Naomi's eyes filled with tears instantly. But she still lifted her chin slightly. I fed a blind man because he was hungry. Not because I wanted anything. One woman near the hallway whispered loudly to another guest from the fundraiser downstairs. She sounds convincing. Vanessa heard it immediately. Her expression hardened. Do not be fooled, she said sharply. People like her survive by lying. Tiny hope appeared for only 1 second. Then Vanessa destroyed it again. She pulled folded papers from her designer bag and handed them toward Marcus. Hospital staff confirmed Naomi tried accessing restricted donation records last month. Naomi gasped. That is not true. Vanessa looked toward the nurses nearby. Tell them. The young nurse lowered her eyes nervously. Social pressure swallowed the hallway whole. Nobody wanted to challenge Vanessa Reed. Nobody. Marcus studied the papers silently. Then his eyes narrowed slightly. These signatures are copied. Vanessa froze for half a second. Tiny. Barely visible. But Naomi saw it. So did the blind beggar. Marcus, Vanessa said carefully now, you are letting emotions cloud your judgment. Naomi suddenly stepped forward despite her fear. I only went to the records office because my mother told me to find somebody named Evelyn Kingston. The moment the name left her mouth, Marcus stopped breathing for 1 second. Vanessa's face lost color again. Even the blind beggar slowly lifted his head. Who told you that name? Marcus asked quietly. Naomi looked terrified now. My mother said if something ever happened to her, I should find Evelyn Kingston. Vanessa moved fast suddenly. She is lying. Her voice came too quickly this time. Too desperate. Marcus noticed immediately. Martha Brooks weakly reached beneath her pillow, then pulled out an old yellow envelope with trembling fingers. Naomi, she whispered painfully. Do not let them take this. Vanessa lunged forward instinctively. Give me that envelope. The entire hallway gasped softly. Marcus stepped between them instantly. Quiet. Controlled. Dangerous. Why are you afraid of a letter from a dying woman? Vanessa could not answer immediately. That silence said more than words. Tiny hope flickered again inside Naomi's broken expression. Then another obstacle crashed down. The hospital administrator suddenly entered the ward holding eviction documents. Miss Carter, he said awkwardly, without payment, your mother must be transferred tonight. Naomi looked completely shattered now. Please, she cannot survive another transfer. Nobody answered her. Guests from downstairs began whispering again. Phones lifted slowly. Somebody recorded everything. Vanessa stepped backward now, regaining control little by little. You see, she said softly toward the crowd. Every tragedy becomes her performance. Naomi lowered her eyes in shame again. Martha cried weakly behind her. Marcus remained silent. Watching. Thinking. Then his assistant's phone suddenly buzzed. The man looked down at the message and turned pale instantly. Sir, he whispered carefully. We found the original camera footage from St. Mary's Church. Vanessa's smile disappeared completely. Marcus Kingston grabbed the assistant's phone immediately. The hospital hallway fell completely silent except for Martha Brooks coughing weakly behind the curtain. Vanessa Reed stood frozen near the doorway now. Not scared yet. But close. Very close. The recovered church camera footage began loading slowly on the small screen. Naomi Carter wiped tears from her face with shaking fingers. I do not understand what is happening, she whispered. Marcus did not answer immediately. His eyes stayed locked on the video. The footage was old. Grainy. Dark. St. Mary's Church parking lot. 12 years earlier. A rainy night. Then suddenly the image sharpened. A younger Vanessa stepped out of a black Kingston family car carrying a folder against her chest. Beside her stood Martha Brooks. Crying. Holding a little girl tightly. Naomi stopped breathing. That is me, she whispered weakly. The hallway exploded into whispers instantly. Vanessa reacted fast. The footage is edited. Marcus looked up slowly. Then why are you in it? Vanessa opened her mouth but no words came out. Emotional silence spread through the hospital floor. Even the nurses stopped moving. The blind beggar near the wall lowered his head quietly again. Truth always survives somewhere, he said softly. Marcus replayed the footage carefully. The timestamp matched the missing church records exactly. Then another detail appeared. Vanessa handing Martha an envelope. Martha collapsing to her knees afterward. Naomi's hands trembled harder now. Mom, Martha cried softly behind the curtain. I tried to protect you. Vanessa snapped instantly. She stole from the Kingston family. Marcus's voice turned colder now. You told me she never existed. Another silence. Sharp. Dangerous. Naomi stared at Vanessa in disbelief. You knew me. Vanessa stepped backward slightly. I knew her mother was desperate. Marcus zoomed closer on the footage. Then he froze. The silver necklace around little Naomi's neck reflected briefly under the church light. The exact same necklace Naomi still carried today. The hallway went dead quiet. One nurse covered her mouth. That necklace, the assistant whispered. It belonged to Evelyn Kingston. Naomi looked confused. Who is Evelyn? Nobody answered immediately. Vanessa suddenly lunged forward toward the phone. Delete that video. Marcus pulled back instantly. Do not touch this evidence. For the first time, fear cracked openly across Vanessa's face. Tiny hope flickered inside Naomi's exhausted eyes. But the mystery only deepened further. Why did her mother hide this for 12 years? Why did Vanessa lie? And why did Marcus react every time Evelyn Kingston's name appeared? Martha began crying harder. I promised her, she whispered painfully. I promised I would hide Naomi. Marcus looked sharply toward the hospital bed. Hide her from who? Before Martha could answer, her heart monitor spiked violently. Nurses rushed forward immediately. Naomi panicked. Mom! Social pressure returned instantly. Hospital staff pushed everyone backward. Vanessa seized the chaos quickly. You see what happens, she shouted. This poor woman is confused and sick. Naomi shook her head desperately. No. My mother remembers everything. Marcus turned toward his assistant. Secure that footage now. Make 3 copies. Vanessa's expression darkened immediately. She understood the danger now. The blind beggar slowly lifted his face toward Marcus. You already know who she is, he said quietly. Marcus looked unsettled for the first time. Not yet. Then the old man smiled sadly. But your heart recognized her before your mind did. Emotional silence crushed the hallway again. Naomi looked between them completely lost now. One young nurse suddenly stepped closer nervously holding another document. Sir, she whispered toward Marcus. We found this inside the old church donation archive. Marcus opened the paper carefully. His face changed instantly. Naomi noticed it immediately. What is it? Marcus looked directly at Vanessa now. Why is Naomi Carter listed under the temporary name Naomi Kingston? Gasps spread across the hallway. Vanessa's knees almost gave out. That paper means nothing, she said too quickly. Marcus kept reading silently. Then his hand tightened around the document. The church paid monthly protection money for this child. Naomi looked terrified now. Protection from who? Nobody answered. Even Vanessa stayed silent this time. If you are watching this story right now, comment below who you think has been hiding the truth all these years, and why Vanessa looks terrified every time Naomi's name appears. Tiny hope rose again for Naomi. Somebody finally believed her pain had a reason. But the obstacle came immediately. The second page of the archive file was missing completely. Torn out. Marcus looked furious now. Who removed this page? No answer came. Then the assistant's phone rang again. He answered quickly before turning pale. Sir, he whispered carefully. The church witness who restored the camera footage just disappeared. Vanessa quietly closed her eyes for 1 second. Relief. Tiny. Hidden. But Marcus noticed it. So did the blind beggar. Marcus slowly folded the document and placed Naomi's necklace carefully beside it. From this moment forward, he said quietly, Naomi Carter does not stay here alone. Naomi looked stunned. Vanessa's face drained of color again. Then the recovered footage suddenly froze on one final frame. A man standing beside Vanessa in the rain 12 years ago. His face partially hidden. But Marcus recognized the Kingston family ring on the man's hand instantly. Marcus Kingston stared at the frozen frame on the phone screen. The Kingston family ring glimmered under the rain from 12 years ago. His breathing slowed heavily. Naomi Carter looked between him and the screen with trembling eyes. Why does that ring matter? She whispered. Nobody answered immediately. Vanessa Reed stepped forward fast. This has gone too far. Marcus raised one hand slightly without even looking at her. The gesture alone stopped the entire hallway. Quiet authority. Cold. Controlled. Nobody leaves, he said softly. Naomi still held her mother's hand tightly beside the hospital bed. Martha Brooks looked exhausted now. Pale. Weak. But for the first time, tears of fear mixed with tears of relief. Somebody finally believed her daughter. Marcus carefully removed his expensive suit jacket and placed it across Naomi's shoulders. The hallway went silent again. Naomi looked stunned. You do not have to do this. Marcus looked at her quietly. You are shaking. That simple sentence broke something inside her. She lowered her head instantly, trying not to cry again. Vanessa watched the moment with growing panic. Marcus, she snapped, she is manipulating you exactly like her mother did. Naomi flinched hard at the accusation. But Marcus's voice remained calm. Enough. Vanessa froze slightly. Nobody spoke to her like that publicly. The blind beggar near the wall smiled faintly. Kindness reveals truth faster than fear, he said softly. Emotional silence spread again through the hospital corridor. One nurse quietly stepped closer and handed Marcus the missing medication bill for Martha. Marcus glanced down once. Then handed his black card back without hesitation. Pay everything. Naomi immediately shook her head. No. I cannot accept that. Marcus looked directly at her for the first time. Deep eyes. Tired eyes. This is not charity. Naomi swallowed painfully. Then why are you helping me? Marcus hesitated for half a second. Because he did not fully understand it himself yet. The necklace. The church footage. The hidden name. The old promise buried inside his family history. Everything pointed toward Naomi somehow. But the truth still felt incomplete. Because somebody hurt you, he finally answered quietly. And I think they have been lying for years. Vanessa stepped closer immediately. You are accusing me now? Marcus did not answer. That silence frightened her more. Tiny hope flickered inside Naomi again. Small. Fragile. Dangerous. Martha suddenly reached weakly toward Marcus. You have your mother's eyes, she whispered painfully. Marcus froze completely. Naomi looked confused. You knew his mother? Martha's breathing became uneven again. Evelyn, trusted me. Vanessa interrupted instantly. She is delirious. But Marcus was already listening too closely now. Too many details connected. The blind beggar slowly tilted his head toward Naomi. Your mother protected you even when it destroyed her life. Naomi's eyes filled immediately. She looked down at the old necklace around her neck. Marcus noticed something then. A tiny engraving inside the silver clasp. Ek. His expression changed instantly. Where did this necklace come from? Naomi touched it protectively. My mother said never let anybody take it. Marcus carefully reached toward the necklace but stopped before touching her skin. That hesitation mattered. Naomi noticed it. Respect. Not pity. For the first time in years, somebody powerful looked at her like she mattered. Vanessa noticed it too. And panic spread deeper across her face. Tiny rescue had already become emotional danger for her. A doctor suddenly entered the hallway holding fresh paperwork. Miss Brooks must be transferred tonight unless legal authorization changes. Vanessa immediately regained confidence. There. You see. Money cannot erase facts. Marcus turned calmly toward the doctor. Prepare a private room upstairs. The doctor blinked nervously. Sir. Under Kingston Holdings coverage. Naomi stepped backward immediately. No. I do not belong upstairs. Marcus answered softly. Neither did I once. The hallway fell silent again. Even Vanessa looked shocked by that sentence. Naomi stared at him now with confused emotion. Pain. Gratitude. Fear. And something else she no longer understood. Then the assistant rushed back holding another recovered church photo. Sir, you need to see this. Marcus took the photo slowly. The image showed Evelyn Kingston standing beside Martha Brooks 12 years earlier. And in Evelyn's arms, a little blind boy. The exact same blind beggar now standing quietly at the end of the hospital hallway. Naomi gasped softly. Vanessa's face drained completely of color. The blind beggar finally lifted his head fully toward Marcus. Then he spoke one sentence that made Marcus stop breathing again. I know what happened that night. The old woman grabbed Amara's wrist so hard that the teacup fell to the floor. Porcelain shattered across the hospital tiles. Her weak eyes trembled with fear. Nia, she whispered again. Your real name is Nia. Amara froze. The room went silent. Even the machines beside the bed sounded louder now. Lucien stood near the window, staring at the old woman like he had seen a ghost from 20 years ago. Slowly, he stepped closer. Who told you that name? He asked. His voice stayed calm. But his fingers tightened behind his back. The old woman looked at him. Tears rolled down her face. Because I was there that night. Amara's breath caught in her throat. What night? She asked softly. But the woman did not answer immediately. Her eyes drifted toward the faded necklace hanging around Amara's neck. The silver pendant. The same symbol carved into the Laurent family crest. Lucien noticed it too. Again. This time, he could not ignore it. Outside the hospital room, Veronica stood hidden behind the half-open door. Listening. Her face slowly lost color. Inside, the old woman reached under her pillow with shaking hands. She pulled out an old photograph. The edges were burned. One side was torn away. Lucien took it carefully. His eyes widened. A young woman stood in the picture beside his father. She was smiling. Pregnant. And around her neck, the same pendant. Amara stared at the photo. Who is she? The old woman swallowed hard. Your mother. Silence. Heavy. Painful. Lucien looked back at Amara. For the first time, the billionaire who controlled boardrooms, politicians, and entire companies looked shaken. Truly shaken. That is impossible, Veronica suddenly snapped as she stormed into the room. This woman is confused. The old woman flinched immediately. Fear crossed her face. Real fear. Veronica pointed at Amara. She is manipulating all of you. Enough, Lucien said coldly. Veronica forced a smile. Lucien, please. Look at her clothes. Her background. This is ridiculous. Amara lowered her eyes. Shame burned her chest again. Poor apartment. Sick mother. Years of struggle. Years of humiliation. She suddenly felt stupid for hoping. But then the old woman grabbed her hand again. You are not crazy, she whispered. I remember your eyes. Lucien slowly looked back at the photograph. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The date written on the back of the picture did not match the official Laurent family records. His expression darkened. My father said that woman disappeared before the fire, he murmured. But this photo was taken 2 months later. Veronica's face tightened for 1 second. Just one. But Lucien saw it. He saw the panic. Immediately, he pulled out his phone. Henri, he said to his head of security. Lock the Laurent archives. Nobody enters. Nobody removes anything. Veronica stepped forward fast. Lucien, you are overreacting. Am I? He asked quietly. The room turned cold. The old woman started coughing violently. Nurses rushed inside. The photograph slipped from Lucien's hand onto the bed. Amara picked it up carefully. That was when she noticed something hidden near the torn edge. Another hand. A child's hand. Someone had been cut out of the picture. Her heart pounded. There was a child there, she whispered. The old woman suddenly looked terrified. Do not say that name here. Whose name? Amara asked. The woman's lips trembled. Tears filled her eyes again. The child they tried to erase. Veronica's breathing became uneven now. She quickly turned toward the door. Lucien noticed. Why are you afraid? He asked. I am not afraid, she replied sharply. But her voice cracked. Lucien stepped closer. Tell me something, Veronica. His eyes locked onto hers. Why does my family crest belong to her? Veronica said nothing. Absolute silence. Then the old woman whispered one final sentence before the nurses pushed everyone back. The person who destroyed that family, her voice broke. She pointed weakly toward the mansion address written on Lucien's business folder. Still lives inside that house. Veronica did not sleep that night. She stood alone inside the Laurent mansion library, staring at the old photograph shaking in her hands. The torn edge. The hidden child. The date that should not exist. Her face hardened slowly. No, she whispered to herself. This ends now. Across the city, Amara sat beside the hospital bed while the old woman slept weakly under dim lights. Rain tapped against the windows. Her fingers still held the photograph tightly. She looked at the smiling pregnant woman again. Her mother. Or maybe the woman she thought was her mother. Nothing felt real anymore. Then her phone vibrated. A message. Private family meeting. Laurent Mansion. Come alone. Lucien's name appeared at the bottom. Amara hesitated. Something felt wrong. But before she could think further, the old woman grabbed her sleeve weakly. Do not trust the quiet ones, she whispered. The dangerous people smile first. Back at the mansion, servants prepared the grand ballroom in silence. Crystal lights. Long tables. Security guards near every entrance. Veronica walked calmly through the room like a queen preparing a funeral. Tonight, she told the staff softly, we protect the Laurent name. An hour later, Amara entered the mansion alone. Immediately, whispers followed her. Rich women covered their mouths. Men in expensive suits stared coldly. Phones lifted quietly. Recording. Judging. Amara stopped near the staircase when she noticed Lucien was not there. Instead, Veronica stepped forward wearing white silk and a calm smile. Too calm. Thank you for coming, Veronica said gently. Amara looked around carefully. Where is Lucien? Veronica tilted her head. Busy cleaning the mess you created. The ballroom suddenly fell silent as a large screen lit up behind them. Gasps filled the room. Hospital security footage appeared on the screen. Amara entering the archive room earlier that day. Amara holding old files. Amara near the cabinet before records disappeared. Murmurs exploded instantly. She stole the documents. She planned this. Gold digger. Amara stepped back in shock. No, that is not true. Veronica raised her voice perfectly for the crowd. The missing Laurent records vanished after she entered the archive. I did not take anything, Amara said. Then explain this. Veronica held up a folder. Inside were copied bank transfer papers. Payments sent to a private investigator under Amara's name. Fake signatures. Fake records. But the crowd did not care. Money spoke louder than truth. One old businessman shook his head slowly. These poor girls always come for inheritance. Another woman whispered loudly, she trapped Lucien from the beginning. Amara's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to cry publicly. She stood straight despite the humiliation crushing her chest. I came for answers, she said quietly. Not money. Veronica smiled sadly like a saint. That is what liars always say. Suddenly, the old nurse from the hospital rushed into the ballroom doors, breathing hard. Stop this, she cried. The girl is innocent. The room turned toward her immediately. Tiny hope flashed across Amara's face. But Veronica moved first. Careful, she said coldly. False testimony destroys careers. The nurse froze. Fear swallowed her words instantly. Her hands trembled. She lowered her head. I may have misunderstood. The crowd shifted again. Doubt returned stronger than before. Amara looked devastated now. Even the witness had stepped back. Then a small voice suddenly echoed through the ballroom. That lady is lying. Everyone turned. A little boy stood near the doorway clutching a folded paper against his chest. Lucien's young nephew. His scared eyes pointed directly at Veronica. I saw her burn papers yesterday. Veronica's smile disappeared for 1 second. Only 1 second. But Amara saw it. Lucien saw it too. He had quietly entered through the back doors moments earlier. Standing in darkness. Watching everything. His eyes slowly moved toward the paper in the child's hands. Bring that to me, he said calmly. Veronica stepped forward fast. He is just a child. But the boy held the paper tighter. Grandfather told me to hide it. The room exploded into whispers again. Veronica's breathing became uneven. She forced another smile. Lucien, this is becoming embarrassing. Lucien did not answer immediately. His gaze remained locked on the folded paper. Then suddenly the massive ballroom doors opened again behind him. Henri entered carrying a sealed black archive box. "Sir," he said carefully. "We found the missing camera footage." Silence. Heavy silence. Veronica slowly turned pale. The ballroom fell completely silent as Henri placed the sealed black archive box on the long marble table. Every eye followed it. Rich guests stopped whispering. Even the musicians near the stage lowered their instruments slowly. Veronica stood frozen for 1 second before forcing another elegant smile onto her face. "This is unnecessary drama," she said softly. Lucien did not look at her. His attention stayed on the box. On the little boy holding the folded paper. On Amara standing alone beneath the crystal lights while dozens of strangers judged her like she was already guilty. The giant screen behind them still glowed faintly blue. Waiting. Watching. Lucien finally stepped toward the center stage of the ballroom. Calm. Controlled. Dangerous in his silence. "Nobody leaves," he said quietly. The guards immediately closed the main doors. Gasps spread across the room. Veronica crossed her arms slowly. "You are humiliating this family." "The truth usually humiliates the wrong people," Lucien replied. A sharp silence followed. Amara looked at him carefully. For the first time that night, she felt something small inside her chest. Not safety. Not peace. Just the feeling that maybe, she was no longer completely alone. Veronica noticed it immediately. "You still believe her?" she asked coldly. Lucien turned toward her slowly. "I believe someone is lying." The crowd shifted uneasily. Phones lifted again. Recording every second now. At the far side of the ballroom, the old nurse entered quietly with trembling hands. She looked terrified. Behind her came 2 older servants from the Laurent mansion. People who had worked there for decades. Their nervous eyes never once lifted toward Veronica. Tiny cracks were starting to appear. Veronica saw them too. Her smile tightened. "This woman has manipulated everyone with fake stories and emotional tricks," she announced loudly to the guests. "She wants money. Status. A family name." Amara swallowed hard as whispers returned around her. "Poor girls always dream big. She planned everything. Look at her clothes." Shame burned her face again. But she did not bow her head this time. "I asked for truth," Amara said quietly. "Not your mansion." One woman in the crowd lowered her phone slowly. Doubt entered her eyes. Another guest whispered, "Then why is Veronica afraid of the archives?" Veronica snapped her gaze toward them instantly. "Enough." Her voice cut through the room sharply. The little boy stepped closer to Lucien and carefully handed him the folded paper. Lucien opened it slowly. Inside was an old birth registration copy. Half burned. Half hidden. But one line remained visible. "Mother, Elena Nia Laurent." Lucien's jaw tightened. Amara stared at the paper with shaking eyes. Nia. The same name from the hospital bed. The same name whispered by the dying woman. Veronica moved fast. "That paper proves nothing." "Then why was it hidden?" Lucien asked. No answer came. Only silence. Heavy silence. "If you are listening right now, tell me this, who do you think deserves justice here? The poor girl everyone mocked, or the powerful woman hiding behind wealth and fear?" The ballroom doors suddenly opened again. More Laurent family members entered. Uncles. Aunts. Business partners. The family council. Public pressure filled the air instantly. One older man pointed directly at Amara. "Remove her before this scandal destroys us." Another added, "Do not embarrass the Loran bloodline for a servant girl." Amara's eyes filled with tears again. But she stayed standing. Quiet dignity. Quiet pain. Lucien stepped between her and the crowd. "Nobody touches her." Veronica laughed softly, but there was panic hidden inside it now. "You are risking your empire for a stranger." Lucien finally looked directly into her eyes. "Am I?" The old nurse suddenly began crying. "I cannot stay silent anymore," she whispered. The room instantly turned toward her. Veronica's face lost color. "Be careful what you say next," she warned coldly. The nurse shook violently. One of the older servants stepped beside her. "We remember the fire," he said weakly. "And the baby." Gasps exploded across the ballroom. Veronica slammed her hand against the table. "Lies." Lucien slowly reached for the remote control near the giant screen. Henri opened the black archive box beside him. Inside sat an old videotape. Dated 22 years earlier. The exact night of the mansion fire. The room stopped breathing. Veronica took one slow step backward. Lucien lifted the tape into the light and said quietly, "Before you judge her, watch this." The ballroom lights dimmed as Lucien placed the old videotape into the player. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The giant screen flickered once. Then the image appeared. Static. Old security footage from the Loran mansion 22 years earlier. The date glowed at the bottom corner. The exact night of the fire. Veronica folded her arms tightly. "This proves nothing," she said quickly. But her voice had lost its strength now. On the screen, rain poured outside the mansion gates. A young woman appeared carrying a baby wrapped in white cloth. Gasps spread across the ballroom immediately. The woman wore the same silver pendant hanging around Amara's neck. Elena. Lucien stared at the screen without blinking. The entire room watched the frightened young mother run toward the mansion doors while smoke slowly rose behind her. Then another figure appeared from inside the mansion. Veronica. Younger. Elegant. Cold. The ballroom went silent. Complete silence. On the video, Elena begged desperately while holding the baby close to her chest. No sound existed in the old footage, but her tears said enough. Veronica suddenly stepped forward. "Turn it off." Lucien did not move. The video continued. Veronica pointed toward the gate. Ordered the guards. Ordered Elena to leave. Then came the moment that froze the entire room. Veronica reached for the child. Elena fought back. The baby slipped from the blanket for 1 second. A tiny birthmark appeared near the child's shoulder. Amara's hand instantly touched the same mark hidden beneath her dress strap. Her breathing stopped. Lucien slowly turned toward her. Shock filled his eyes. The old nurse began crying openly now. "That is her," she whispered. "That baby is Amara." Murmurs exploded across the ballroom. "Impossible. She is Loran blood." Veronica knew. Veronica shook her head violently. "No. This is manipulation." Henri opened another file from the black archive box. "Hospital records," he announced calmly. "The original birth registration." He placed the papers on the table before the family council. One older woman picked them up with trembling hands. Her face turned pale immediately. "Mother, Elena Nia Loran," she read softly. "Child name. Amara Nia Loran." The room fell silent again. Phones slowly lowered. Nobody whispered anymore. They only stared at Amara. The same girl they mocked an hour earlier. The same girl they called a liar. Amara's legs trembled beneath her. Tears filled her eyes, but she could not speak. 20 years of pain suddenly crashed inside her chest. The poverty. The hunger. The insults. The nights caring for a sick mother while rich people laughed at her existence. Lucien stepped beside her quietly. Protective. Steady. She told the truth from the beginning, he said calmly. Veronica pointed at Amara desperately. She still came here for money. Enough, Lucien said sharply. The word echoed across the ballroom. Veronica froze. Lucien picked up another document slowly. A signed letter. Burn marks covered the edges. This was hidden inside my father's private vault. He opened it carefully. It is addressed to Elena. Every eye locked onto him. Lucien read aloud. If anything happens to me, our daughter must remain protected from Veronica. She knows the child is the legal heir to the Laurent estate. Gasps exploded again. Veronica's face drained completely. One businessman stepped backward in disbelief. You hid the heir. Another whispered, all these years. Veronica shook her head wildly now. He wrote that under pressure. But then the old servant stepped forward trembling. No, he said quietly. I heard the argument that night. The ballroom turned toward him. Tears filled his old eyes. Master Laurent wanted to bring Elena and the child home. Veronica threatened to destroy them both. Veronica screamed suddenly, lies. But her voice sounded broken now. Weak. Desperate. The little boy near Lucien clutched his sleeve tightly. Why would she hide a baby, he asked innocently. Nobody answered. Because everyone already understood. Amara slowly looked toward Veronica through tear-filled eyes. You destroyed my life, before I could even speak. Veronica could not look back at her. Lucien opened the final folder inside the archive box. His expression changed instantly. Darker. Colder. Inside was one last document. Legal transfer papers. Signed after the fire. Signed by Veronica herself. The ballroom leaned forward as Lucien read the first line silently. Then he slowly lifted his eyes toward Veronica and asked one final question that left her completely speechless. Why did you pay someone to declare Amara dead? The ballroom remained frozen after Lucien's question. Nobody breathed. Nobody whispered. Veronica stood in the center of the room surrounded by people who once admired her. Now they only stared. Shock. Disgust. Fear. Lucien slowly lifted the legal transfer papers higher for everyone to see. These documents were signed 3 days after the mansion fire, he said calmly. The child was declared dead before any official investigation even began. Veronica shook her head immediately. I was protecting this family. By destroying a child? Lucien asked quietly. Silence crushed the room again. Veronica's composure finally cracked. You do not understand, she cried. That baby would have ruined everything. Gasps spread across the guests. Some people lowered their eyes in shame. Others stepped away from Veronica completely. The old nurse covered her mouth while crying softly. She begged you for mercy that night, the nurse whispered. Elena begged on her knees. Amara stood motionless beside the ballroom stage. Tears rolled silently down her face now. Not loud tears. Not angry tears. Just 22 years of pain finally being seen by the world. Lucien turned toward the family council. You all watched this girl get humiliated tonight, he said firmly. You called her a liar. A thief. A servant chasing money. Nobody answered him. The same people who laughed earlier now stood silent with lowered heads. One older woman stepped toward Amara slowly. We were wrong, she whispered. Another guest put down his phone completely. The recording stopped. The whispers stopped. Even the musicians remained frozen in silence. Veronica suddenly grabbed the edge of the table desperately. She still has no proof she belongs here. Henri immediately opened another folder from the archive box. Inside was the final medical file from the private hospital where Elena gave birth. Attached to it was a newborn footprint card. And beside it, a photograph of baby Amara wearing the silver pendant around her tiny wrist. The same pendant hanging from Amara's neck now. The room gasped again. Closed circle. Final proof. Veronica's lips trembled. No, Lucien placed the photograph beside Amara gently. Your mother kept this hidden for you, he said softly. Amara touched the old photo with shaking fingers. For the first time in her life, she saw proof that someone had wanted her. Protected her. Loved her. The old servant stepped forward next. Master Laurent searched for the child for years, he revealed. But Veronica told everyone the baby died in the fire. Veronica screamed suddenly, because the child threatened this family. Lucien's eyes darkened instantly. No, he replied coldly. She threatened your control. The ballroom erupted into shocked murmurs again. One businessman stepped back from Veronica completely. You stole an inheritance from a child. Another woman whispered, she let that girl grow up in poverty. Veronica looked around wildly now, searching for support. None came. Her allies avoided her eyes. Family members moved away from her slowly. The little boy who brought the hidden paper hid behind Lucien's arm. Why are grown people so cruel? He asked quietly. Nobody could answer him. Veronica's voice broke apart. I built this family. On lies, Lucien replied. Then he faced the entire ballroom with calm authority. Effective immediately, Veronica Laurent is removed from all control within the Laurent estate and foundation pending legal review. Shock hit the room again. Veronica staggered backward. You cannot do this. I already did. His voice stayed quiet. But absolute. Henri stepped forward carefully. The lawyers are waiting upstairs, sir. Veronica looked at Amara one final time. Not with power anymore. Only fear. Only collapse. After everything, you still win, she whispered bitterly. Amara wiped her tears slowly. Her voice remained soft. Dignified. I did not come here to win, she said. I came here to know why my mother disappeared. Public silence filled the ballroom again. Heavy. Emotional. Real. Lucien gently picked up the silver pendant from Amara's trembling hand. Then he opened it carefully before the crowd. Inside was a tiny hidden photo of Elena holding newborn Amara beside Lucien's father. A real family. Hidden for decades. The final wall inside the ballroom collapsed. One of the older women began crying openly. That child belonged here all along. Lucien slowly placed the pendant back into Amara's hand. Then he looked toward the massive staircase leading deeper into the mansion. Warm lights glowed above them now. Not cold anymore. Not distant anymore. Lucien extended his hand toward her quietly. Your room has been waiting for 22 years, he said softly. Amara, you are finally home. Amara stood at the bottom of the grand staircase with tears still shining in her eyes as Lucien held out his hand toward her. Amara, you are finally home. The ballroom remained silent behind them. Nobody laughed anymore. Nobody whispered anymore. The same people who once looked at her with disgust now watched her with shame. Slowly, carefully, Amara placed her trembling hand into Lucien's. Warm. Safe. Real. For the first time in her life, she did not feel invisible. Lucien guided her up the staircase while the mansion lights glowed softly around them. No cameras flashed now. No cruel voices followed her. Only silence. Healing silence. Behind them, Veronica sat alone near the ballroom table while lawyers quietly collected the archive files, the burned letter, the hospital records, and the old videotape that destroyed her lies forever. Nobody stood beside her anymore. The little boy suddenly ran toward Amara halfway up the stairs. "Wait," he called softly. He held out the silver pendant box carefully with both hands. "This belongs to you." Amara looked at the pendant again. The same secret object that once brought pain now felt different in her hands. Not a curse anymore. Proof. Family. Truth. She opened it slowly once more. Inside, the tiny photograph of Elena and the baby remained safe. Lucien looked at the picture quietly. "Your mother protected you until the very end," he said softly. Amara pressed the pendant against her chest as tears rolled down her face again. "I spent my whole life thinking nobody wanted me." Lucien stopped walking and looked directly at her. "You were hidden," he replied calmly. "Not forgotten." Her lips trembled. For a second, she could not speak at all. Upstairs, the doors to the east wing opened slowly. Warm lights filled the hallway. Fresh flowers stood beside framed family portraits. One empty frame rested at the center table waiting for a missing family member. Waiting for her. The old nurse stood near the doorway crying softly. "Your mother asked me to tell you something if this day ever came," she whispered. Amara stepped closer carefully. The nurse smiled through tears. She said, "Do not let pain turn your heart cold." Amara closed her eyes for a moment. Then nodded slowly. "I will try." Inside the room prepared for her, new clothes rested neatly beside legal documents restoring her Laurent identity. School records. Bank papers. Medical care approval for the sick woman who raised her. Everything Lucien promised quietly without making it feel like pity. Not charity. Justice. One of the older servants placed tea gently on the table. "Miss Laurent," he said respectfully. The words hit Amara harder than any insult ever had. Miss Laurent. Not servant girl. Not liar. Not outsider. Her real name. Her real place. Downstairs, the ballroom slowly emptied. Guests left in silence carrying the weight of what they had witnessed. One woman paused near the staircase before leaving. "We judged her by her clothes," she admitted quietly. "And we were wrong." Another man lowered his head. Truth does not care about status. Later that night, Amara stood alone near the mansion balcony overlooking the city lights. The same city where she once walked hungry and humiliated. Lucien stepped beside her quietly, giving her space instead of pressure. Respect instead of control. "You do not have to decide everything tonight," he said softly. "You only need to rest." Amara looked at him carefully. "Why did you help me?" Lucien answered after a long silence. "Because someone should have protected you long ago." Her eyes filled again. But this time the tears felt lighter. Healing tears. Peaceful tears. Inside the mansion, laughter from the little boy echoed faintly through the halls. Warmth slowly replaced fear. The silver pendant rested safely around Amara's neck once more. No longer a hidden mystery. No longer evidence of shame. Now it was the symbol of a promise finally fulfilled. A poor girl once mocked by the powerful now stood where she truly belonged. Not because of money. Not because of revenge. But because the truth survived long enough to be seen. And in the end, the people who mocked the weak lost their power, while the girl they tried to erase found her name, her family, and her dignity again. Because no matter how deeply lies are buried, the truth always finds its way back to the light. And those who look down on the poor often forget one thing: the person they humiliate today may be the very soul the world was waiting to recognize tomorrow.